Thank you, Mr. Tannock, and I have some questions for you about the East China Sea, the peace initiative propagated by the President Ma. So my first question for you just as to the initiative propagated by the President Ma, how do you think about that, and do you have any comment or opinion on that? Thank you, please.
Well, speaking personally, I'm not speaking, I have to be clear, for my political group or the British government, although I come from the same party. It's a Conservative-led coalition under Prime Minister Cameron, so I'm not committing anybody except myself for what I'm saying, to make that absolutely clear. But I am chairman of the friendship group in the European Parliament with Taiwan, so I take a close interest in Taiwan and in the region of the Far East, and particularly the East and South China Seas. I think it's a timely and courageous initiative. I think that it's a very valuable contribution to what is becoming one of the international flashpoints. Clearly, 2013, we've just started this year, and a number of international observers are concerned about rising Sino-Japanese tensions over the Diaoyutai Islands chain and the dispute that exists between them. And of course, the press and the media have given less coverage to the fact that actually the dispute isn't just between the People's Republic of China and Japan, but also with the Republic of China, Taiwan. It's more complicated in international law, and I think we have to recognize there is a dispute going on over these islands. And of course there have been some, as it were, confrontations between China and Japan, which made many of us here in Europe extremely uncomfortable. There's been allegations of jets being scrambled, that China will be sending military naval patrols to the region and so on around the islands. And it is a very dangerous situation, and of course there is rising nationalism in Japan and in China. The Chinese, particularly their military and their navy, are becoming more assertive in their kind of regional, as it were, territorial and maritime claims, but not just over these islands, but over other issues like the Spratlys and the Paracels and so on. And there's been a big confrontation with Philippines last year, which came to a standoff. So I don't underestimate, Beijing's determination in this matter, and for that matter, Tokyo's determination to preserve the status quo after they nationalised the islands, as it were, which was somewhat provocative in many ways. But they claim it was, of course, to reduce tensions because a private individual, the governor of, I think it was, or mayor of Tokyo, was going to buy them. And he was from a rather nationalistic faction politically. And so I can understand what was done and the government's explanation, but nevertheless this was seen by Taiwan and China as a further assertion of Japanese ownership and sovereignty over these disputed islands. So one thing has led to another, and now we do need to find some way of confidence building measures, de-escalation of tensions, and peaceful resolution to this problem, including the development of marine and other natural and mineral resources on the islands and in the surrounding territorial waters.
You just mentioned the all party concerned need to build confidence system or confidence
building measures.
Yeah, and the Taiwan authority would like to. Furthermore, Taiwan authority would like to promote the conduct of a code of conduct towards the East China Sea. So, how do you think about that?
I think it's a very good idea because we have some precedents in these sort of things internationally. There's been both the North Sea continental shelf going back to the International Court of Justice in 1969 between various maritime powers, littoral states, Denmark, Germany, for the North Sea. There's the other famous one, the Antarctic Treaty Organization, which settles territorial disputes over Antarctica between countries like France, Britain, Chile, Russia, and so on. And these are very important concepts that they settled and put aside their sovereignty claims for the peaceful development. I've been to Antarctica, and although you're not allowed to extract minerals there, you can conduct scientific research on marine conservation and so on. And that's worked very well for the last 50 years. And so something like that needs to be thought through, because clearly we have a very, we have a very good knowledge of the extremely violent confrontation and wars that happened in the 1930s between China and Japan, and we don't want to see history reinventing itself and going back to the pre-war Second World War period, which would be an absolute catastrophe for the region and for the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you just say that the history is very terrible about the China and Japan, and during the 1930s year. So do you have any suggestions toward China or Japan in the issue, please?
Mm-hmm. Well, I just think that, obviously governments need to talk, and I think there has to be some recognition by Japan that there is a dispute going on. My understanding, from having met the Japanese ambassador, they don't think under international law there is any basis for any dispute. They think the matter is settled after the Second World War with the Treaty of San Francisco. But of course, the Shimoneki Agreement of 1895, when they basically conquered Taiwan and by a secret protocol annexed Taiwan and all these territories, including the Diaoyu Islands, in the views of many international jurists, would be null and void because of what happened after the Second World War, when Japan was a defeated power, and in many ways all their claims on annexed territory from the previous century by force were nullified. And so I think that it was probably a mistake by the Americans when they handed these islands to administrative control, as they call it, to Taiwan with Okinawa, in 1970 or thereabouts. I mean, technically, all the member states of the European Union, as far as I know, and the United States are neutral in terms of the absolute claims for sovereignty of these islands. The fact that the Americans call it administrative control suggests that they have some reservations about who actually is sovereign on these islands. So it is clearly a big question mark in international law. There is no consensus, and I think it would be helpful if all the parties, and I think that the recognition for the role of Taiwan is an important one, but of course Taiwan has its own problem that it's not recognized as a state by all the other players, although it's de facto enjoys relations, trade, commercial, political, with all the countries, and increasingly good relations, I have to say, across the straits with China. And it would become somewhat paradoxical if Taiwan and China had to be on the same side. They should be effectively three parties to this dispute, with the assistance of outside powers, but including member states or the European Union, if that's helpful. But I mean, it's none of our business to muscle in there. We're not trying to impose our views or anything else. What we are concerned about in this dispute is the danger of escalation of tension, an outbreak of, by mistake or by accident, hostilities, casualties, and anything else that could mean in the region, as well as the repercussions that would have on the international financial system, the markets. I mean, China is, soon to be, in the next 20 years, the #1 global economic power. The People's Republic of China, I mean by that, of course. Japan, is, the third economy in the world. So these are major global players economically and increasingly militarily for China. We just don't want to see the thing ending in violence or conflict. So I think at this stage, President Ma is taking, I think, a very statesman-like, mature approach that this needs to be settled amicably on a regional, multi-party basis.
Okay, my last question for you, just do you have any suggestion for the European Union to play a appropriate role in this issue, please?
Well, not proactively. I don't think it's the European Union's business to, as it were, interfere in what is essentially a trilateral, dispute. Certainly, I'm sure that Baroness Ashton, the External Action Service, the member states, if they were called upon to assist in somehow mediating talks or giving advice about the experience of what's happened in the North Sea or other areas of dispute. There's been big disputes over islands traditionally between Finland and Sweden, where this was settled in the 1920s, and so on. But these are inhabited islands, so it's slightly different. So there are lots of experience in the European Union and in Europe generally about disputes over islands and territories and how we come about settling them in a friendly and peaceful fashion. I think our role has to be as interested observers, as friends of all the countries concerned. And I'm a friend of Taiwan. Taiwan enjoys extremely good relations with the European Union, even though it's not recognized. It has visa-free travel, huge investments both ways, huge amounts of exchanges of students, businessmen. So Taiwan, is particularly respected as a democracy. Japan is a democracy. China is, there has been a change of power now, a new leadership under soon-to-be President Xi, Secretary General Xi of the Communist Party of China. So, we are well aware of what's going on. What we don't want is, as I say, hostilities, and we worry about the possibility of something exploding unexpectedly, given the huge tension. I am taking some comfort that seems to be a little bit of de-escalation in with some exchanges politically between the countries concerned, but nevertheless, I'm sure that certainly the European Parliament, who's taken an interest in this dispute, will be very happy to help in any way, and similarly the EU institutions, the Commission, the Council, the Member States, we are there to help our friends and give advice. But beyond that, we are neutral on the dispute. Although, speaking again personally, I think that Taiwan's historic claims are very strong, but that's my personal view.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right.